All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and Happy New Year to all. 2021 is finally upon us, and we are back with our first episode of the year and our 53rd, I believe, Box Lunch episode. And we have a fabulous entertainer and educator with us today, the one and only Armond Vance. How are you doing today, Armond?
I'm doing great, and I am honored to be the first guest of the new year.
Well, we are hoping you lead us into a productive and very happy 2021 indeed.
Armand, no pressure at all.
Yeah, really. Before we get into everything, do you mind just taking a moment and introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, so I am a professional. My name is Armond Vance, and I'm a professional musician in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I live in Fort Worth, and I have been living here for almost 2 years now. So I'm relatively new to the area, but I really believe in getting like rooted in a place and immersing myself in the community. And during this whole pandemic, it's been a little bit more difficult to do that. But I think during my recent expeditions and doing the front porch concerts, I've really have been able to immerse myself and integrate myself into the Fort Worth community. I teach middle school orchestra during the day. I like to say that's my day job. I teach middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and I teach orchestra. So I am able to continue to live through my passion and by educating the youth what the thing that I grew up doing and the thing that I love to do, which is music. And I'm a middle school teacher, and I am also a professional musician. As I stated, I play violin, viola, cello, and bass.
Wow.
And I also play piano as well. And I've started when I was 12 years old, when I was in middle school. So that's always a story that I like to share with my students, because I think everyone's always under the impression that if you want to be a professional musician, you have to start. It has to be something that started when you were 3 or 4. But I kind of just organically found music when I was preteen. And so, I mean, as long as you're really passionate and dedicated about something, there's the opportunities are limitless. And yeah, I'm originally from Ohio, so and I was just there visiting my family in Ohio with my partner. And so I'm enjoying all the sunlight and warm weather for sure in Texas. It's a huge contrast. And yeah, and I think that pretty much hits on all the major points.
Very nice, very nice. Are you excited about the Buckeyes in the national championship game?
Well, I mean I am, but like I was not a great fan when I was there. I only went to like one game my whole time going to Ohio State. Actually, I mean that's a college I went to too. So it's really funny because I'm Ohio State. I'm probably the least one of the least how would you say patriotic Ohio State fans. They're great and I root for them, but like I do not really watch football. Granted, I played for a little when I was younger, but like yeah, I'm just like every time someone tells me about the Buckeyes, I'm just like, oh, no, I didn't, but I'm assuming they won because they usually always win. So yeah, so
well, they did a pretty good job this weekend, it looks like, and so
yeah,
congrats to all those Buckeye fans out there. I spent some time in Michigan, and I know how dedicated they all are. So
oh yeah, the rival. Oh yeah, that was one of the reasons why I think I never really got on that bandwagon too hard, is because like that people there take that rivalry very, very seriously. Like it's like a religion, honestly. Like
Yes.
that's kind of what it's like. And so it's too intense for me. I went to Ohio State. I was in music. I was really focused and in music school. I was always in a practice room, so I never really had time to go to the games anyway. But like, yeah, it's intense. People like, it's like you would think that there's like I don't know, something deeper going on, something deeper going on, but it's really not. It's just like two sports teams. Like they would cross out all the M's on campus when I was at Ohio State, and they would. It's kind of funny. It is kind of like humorous to see it all happen, and like it is mostly lighthearted. But like, I mean, if you walk on campus with a University of Michigan shirt on, like, I mean, good luck to you. It's yeah, you're like putting a target on your back.
Oh, yes, indeed. Now, Armand, you mentioned briefly about your traveling show. I'll say about your porch concerts. Do you mind talking a little bit about that and kind of what inspired that, and maybe give us a little bit of background on what it is you've actually been doing with those throughout the pandemic? I believe, is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, the from my front porch concert series is kind of really um, inspired. I mean, the it started really like in April, I want to say, and I was just kind of like brainstorming ways to continue to deliver music to an audience during this pandemic. Um, and because like live music is basically live concerts were non-existent for a while. They still pretty much are. And just the access to live music in general is just like, not there. And so everyone there is like I sense like this urging, like this craving um just for music amongst the population. And so like I was, and actually it's kind of like one of those accidental inventions, I would say, because I was actually like like I was in the lobby of my apartment building just playing like my instrument and my violin. I would practice. There's like this lobby area and people will come by and then just they would gather and they would just sit down and like listen. And so it kind of turned, and so and I was flattered by that. Um and then people would just mention how like this like it's how it's so awesome because they can't, because it's like right there at their doorstep, like right there. They just walked outside, they heard a violinist playing. um and then I did the same thing. My partner, she lives in Minneapolis, and I actually would do the same thing at her apartment building when I visited her and everything. And then one guy just walked by and he was like, "Yo, can you play for my girlfriend's birthday next week?" And he was like, I'll pay you like so and so." And I was like, "Oh, well, sure." And so I the next week I just went into their like a apartment, like on their patio, socially distant, wearing masks and everything. And I performed for like a gathering of like 3 people, and then that kind of really kicked it off and really motivated me to like continue doing this. I'm just like, well, this is kind of like a Uber Eats or like a Netflix version, or it's kind of like it functions the same way as any of those services. Like, it's bringing it to you, like, how you hail an Uber right to your door, or how you can just have like any movie that you want from Netflix. It's kind of like that instant gratification in your own home that people get. And so I was just like, this is exactly what the world needs right now. This is exactly what the world
Yeah.
needs at this moment. And so I flew back to Fort Worth, and I would play like in the streets, like particularly at the on Magnolia, in front of Melt, and a lot of people would come by, gather, throw some tips while walking by, and it was people would record, post it on their Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and that really picked up a lot. So I was like, okay, this is going somewhere. and I sensed I had a lot of momentum behind me. And then eventually, I started posting on some uh, Facebook neighborhood, like some neighborhood Facebook groups, like the
Right.
Fairmount Facebook page, and I got a lot of responses from there. And that's the community that I live adjacent to, and so travel was very easy, and because it's like conveniently right next door to me. And a lot of people saw my Facebook posts. I was stated like, hey, like I'm a freshman musician. I want to provide music in the area. If you're interested in booking, here are my rates, and so all that information. And then I think one of my first like actual front porch concerts in Fort Worth was playing for like a 40th wedding anniversary in the Fairmount neighborhood, and it was just like it was a really it was a really beautiful event. I mean, it was for it was just the couple and some of their kids were present as well, and it was like a sunny day. It was a very idyllic situation, and like it was a bunch of photos were taken from it, and I was just like, this has to keep happening. Like this is great, and they were very cordial to me, and they were very generous. They offered like cake after, they offered cake afterwards, and they and yeah, it was a really it felt like a very like it reminded me why I'm so invested in why I do what I do, because like it was a very intimate experience, and all the concerts that have come after that have functioned in a very similar manner, in which they
Right.
are very like intimate, and honestly they're very like healing and therapeutic for people, because there's been so much tension and so much stress among with the with the pandemic just looming in the clouds, and giving some people so much anxiety, that it provided like it was kind of like a serendipitous moment of just that existed. It's like a moment that kind of exists outside of time for people, because it's just like they can just sit and enjoy the music, and kind of like take a break, or take like a break from everything else that's surrounding them. And people, and it's also for me, it's been therapeutic for myself as well, because it's like I get to continue to um, utilize my craft, and but do it in a way that feels like nurturing, as opposed to like that feels like I don't know, routine, or that feels just like because typically I will play like weddings and everything over the summer. Like that's very normal for me as a musician to play like at events. Like I will play at a wedding, I'll play at a birthday, but it's very like staged. And I guess the unique
Right.
thing about these concerts is that, I mean, yes, people do contact me to book me for the event, but it kind of is more organic, and people are a lot more excited to have music. They don't take it for granted. Like, and when I play at a wedding, I'm kind of like in the background. No one. I'm just like, people have this expectation that I'm supposed to be there. Like, it's like, of course you're supposed to have a violinist, but of course you're supposed to have a string quartet, whatever. But in this situation, when I'm in someone's living room, or when I'm in someone's front porch, or I'm in someone's patio, whatever, like, it's kind of like it. The whole neighborhood kind of gets involved in a way, and so people come out their doors, are like, what's happening? Like it feels kind of cinematic, and people start dancing on the streets. When I'm playing on the street, people will have started like dancing with their partners, like slow dancing and everything while I played, and there's like tons of videos of it. And so it just feels it feels more it feels less, and it feels less, it really just feels less staged. And I come from a classical background, although most of the music that I play is like hip hop, jazz,
Yep.
like more contemporary music that people can relate to, which I think is also very fulfilling, and more it makes the what I do more relatable, for and more digestible for everyone. So I come from this, but I was classically trained though, so it's like um, I'm used to being like in nice, dressed up in like a suit, dressed up in a suit, and like performing in front of a large audience. and I performed in front, and I've also performed like in like arenas in front of like 10,000 people and everything. But and so like I'm used to being in these like more formalized settings, and so that makes this so nice, these front porch concerts, is that, you know, I'm not in that setting. I'm breaking that barrier. And for a lot of people will be like, oh, like, because everyone, I think, if when they go to like a symphony concert, like most people are going to enjoy the experience. Most people are going to enjoy the experience of it, and it is a really nice experience. Like I love going to the symphony and hearing like all the sounds of the orchestra just come together, to make like beautiful like harmony. And but for a lot of people, I think like that experience can also kind of feel like, you know, a lot of labor. It could feel like laborious, like they have to, like, you know, buy the ticket one, and then from there, like, you know, dress up and like make plans around it. Like it becomes a whole thing. And there's also, I think, this sense of like, what's the word, like, so maybe like elitism around in some of these like arenas, especially like in these classical worlds. Um, and there definitely can be, but I think that creates a barrier for some people, and particularly, I think, people of color as well. Um, when when you are in this space where you don't see like people where you don't see people who look similar to you, or when you just hear music that's more unrelatable to you.
Right.
So like my front porch concert series is, I think, unique for people because, like, you know, I come to people and I'm not dressed up in a suit or anything. I just come like as I am. Like this is something I would wear. I'll just come as I am, and I engage in a dialogue with the people that I'm performing for.
Right.
And so it's like they get to know me a little bit. I get to know them. It's more of like an exchange that actually happens, as opposed to like me just like coming, performing, not saying anything, and then leaving. Like I did my job, it's done. Like it's more like it's more engaging, it's more interactive with them, and I think it's more meaningful because of all of that. Because when you go to a symphony concert, you know, you don't really get to. It almost feels like the people performing on the stage are like can't really, you know, be touched, like as if there's like this invisible barrier between the audience and the stage. And so that's kind of what I think my which what I'm doing is why it is so like impactful for people, because it's like, you know, how often do people have a professional musician in their house and also have like a conversation with them? And so it really makes it, and so I think what I'm doing may actually be could actually be a gateway to going to like maybe an orchestra, like a professional orchestra concert too, or it can also motivate people to appreciate like classical music,
Yes.
or other styles of music, because I'm reinventing all these songs in unique ways. Like I'll like play, like for instance, like playing like a Drake song, or like a Tupac song on a violin or something like that. People would never like, wait, like what? I didn't know violin can do that. They're kind of confused. It's kind of it's really interesting. It's a really interesting experience, and it's really funny to watch people react. They're just like, what? Like they hear the beat drop and they're just like hey, like they're like, because they know the song, but they've never heard it in that way. And so, in addition to this being all a healing experience and people being very grateful for it, I think it's also just like a kind of like a I don't like it's a learning experience for people too, because they're like, wait a minute, like I didn't like you can play that song, like you play hip hop and violin, you can do this, but then it's also like, oh, but that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. That's a really beautiful classical piece. Like people on both ends of the spectrum kind of can meet in the middle, and they're just like, oh, well, like I actually really enjoy this. I mean, and there's been a lot of people who I performed for who they've never seen, where they have never been to a symphony, or they've never heard a classical instrument live, And so they're just like, and I think they develop a new appreciation for it after they hear it right in front of them.
Right. Yeah. I think it's so interesting that that you're bringing up these points, because you're a person of color. You're playing a violin, and it's contemporary music. Now I'm gonna quote something from an article that you were in, and I want you to expand on this a little bit. You said, if you don't see yourself represented in a certain field, you can develop a subconscious feeling as if you don't necessarily belong. Just because you don't see yourself represented doesn't mean that space isn't for you now. You've just got to make yourself a seat at the table. Now, can you expand on that a little bit? Because you are blowing doors open in so many ways. And that is so encouraging and inspiring to see. What inspired you to start classical music?
So I kind of fell into it. That's kind of what I think. I guess kind of what I think it how it happened. Like I kind of like I never really saw classical music at a distance. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to get there. I kind of just rolled into it. And I started playing violin when I was in middle school, and I had a very inspirational middle school teacher and a very inspirational high school teacher who really opened these doors to me and kind of showed me the world in a way through music. And they were classical musicians themselves, and they were very, very skilled, and they had a lot of connections to the classical music scene in my hometown, Toledo, Ohio. And so like I picked up the violin, and then I was just kind of like playing what they gave me, and they would give me like music. We would play the music in orchestra, and it was kind of like when you play in middle school orchestra, when you're in a middle school orchestra, like you don't really play real pieces yet. Or high school, you don't play, like you play music, but you're not playing like a Mozart symphony, like when you're in 8th grade, or you're not playing like a Dvorak piano concerto or whatever. You're not doing any of that. I mean, some kids like who have private lessons, yeah, of course might be there, but like when you're just starting in middle school and in the high school, like you have to go through these like you kind of have to just go through like these beginner pieces first and intermediate pieces before you get into like real classical literature. And there's arrangements of that stuff that's watered down, but it's not like it's not quite like the real thing. So I eventually, like when I was like in high school, I joined the youth orchestra, the school youth orchestra, which my high school orchestra director was actually also one of the directors of. He was my high school director, and he was the youth orchestra director. And so he was kind of my ticket into the youth orchestra, because I would have no way of knowing about this youth orchestra unless he was the teacher. So it was kind of a coincidence, very much so. And he like invited me to a rehearsal, and I was like already kind of very motivated in class. Like in my class, probably one of the more like I practiced a lot. I practiced a lot when I was in high school, and that was probably the thing. And that was definitely the thing I was most passionate about. So I would stay after school and play like 2-3 hours. And so I get to this youth orchestra rehearsal, and I immediately noticed that it looks a lot different than my high school orchestra. Because one, I'm the only Black person in the whole entire room, and I'm just like where are these people coming from? I'm just like, I was just sitting there. I'm just like, because I was like, how are, like, I'm like, this is odd. And when I was in high school, I didn't make those connections like immediately. I didn't think anything of it because I was still kind of young. And so I wasn't thinking about like how systemic racism and like history of like lack of access and opportunities because of systemic racism has led to these inequities. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I didn't know what that meant. Like I was just like, I want to play violin. Like that, it's very straightforward. But then I'm there, and then I'm the rehearsal starts, and I hear these kids play. I'm just like, what is going on? Like, I am like not able to keep up with anything. I'm lost in the music. I'm just sitting there faking violin, just looking at the music, just like that. And my stand partner is like pointing to the spot for me. I'm just like, oh, thanks. And she was nice, but like she was just she just kept pointing to like the spots we were at. And I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. Like what is going on? We didn't rehearse this in my high school. What are you doing in your high school? Like I don't understand. And so like eventually, so that first rehearsal, I was like, okay, I have a lot of work to do. Trying to go back to the drawing boards, get back in the practice room, and eventually, like I worked my way up, and end up by my senior year of high school, I ended up being like in the top youth orchestra, and so it was, and so that was like a lot of work, but behind it, and also what I realized is that a lot of those kids who I was performing with, in that youth orchestra, they were all getting private lessons. They were all getting private lessons, and they were all coming from high schools that had really well-funded, well-resourced programs. And my high school had suffered over the years due to budget cuts and in the inner city public school systems, because I went to an inner city public school. And so as a result of like those budget cuts, the arts are the first thing to really suffer.
Yes.
And so I was coming from a program that had a phenomenal director, but unfortunately, like it had been deprived. And so because of that, I had to play like catch up, and this catch up will continue into college and classic, and like again, this is why I say I kind of fell into classical music though, because it's like I love playing the violin, and classical music just happened to be the vehicle that they delivered violin and the instruction into. But I ended up really developing a passion for it though. So I was like, oh, like this is like, I can sense like the like I loved just hearing all this, like the sonorous like sounds come together, and just all of the like I love just the tension and the release of classical music. It's like an ebb and flow of it. It's like it'd be like a build up, and then very climactic, very like dramatic, and then it would just and then that build up will come to a cadence, and it's just very fulfilling. It was just like a very fulfilling musical style, and also it's very virtuosic as well. So it's kind of showy and flashy in some ways, and I think I really enjoyed like the elements of that. But I know, and when I was in the music school, like when I went to Ohio State, but to get into music school, you have to come in with a classical background. You have to audition, performing 3 different pieces of contrasting styles, and so like I prepared my junior and senior years for high school like for that, and I ended up getting in and everything. But like the thing about music school is that like if you want to do something that's like and I'm just not speaking for every music school, but like for the most part, like music schools are really much centered around the Western European art music classical canon. Like you have to play like the Bach, the Brahms, the Tchaikovsky, the Rachmaninoff. You have to be well versed in those or familiar with those to audition. Like you want to do, like if I wanted to come into a music school and I wanted to play, I showed them like my as a violinist, if I wanted to come in and play like Kendrick Lamar on violin, or like show them like how my beat making skills and if I wanted to come in as a hip hop artist, basically like that, but with violin as my voice, as my medium, as my mode of expression. There's not a place for that. This is something that's kind of like you have to invent. Music schools are in my opinion, like that, the world, that world is still kind of behind.
Right.
Like the whole idea of um, going into music school as a professional violinist or on any instrument, and having to, and only being able to really, um, only really in classical music being held as kind of like the superior style of music. Like felt I've never really agreed with that. And no one's saying, oh, classical music is superior. Like no one's actually verbalizing those exact words, but it's very much implied. And and I never really, and I always kind of felt uncomfortable by that. I just didn't have the words for it because I grew up listening to like I grew up listening to a lot of R&B, hip hop, like especially like 90s hip hop, like the Fugees, Lauryn Hill, Erykah Badu, all that, De La Soul, like those groups. And I always, and those styles of music are very intricate and complex in themselves and have a lot of layers behind them and are very didactic in that they teach you about a history about like in particular with hip hop, um, a history about neglect in the communities, a history about, but also a history about prevailing amidst adversity as well. And so they're very, powerful musical genres and everything, but I just didn't feel like there was a space for that when I was in music school. And so it's as an adult, like very much like within the past few years, that I've been able to really take my musical roots, the things that I grew up listening to, and the things that relate with my own culture, and um, use the violin to to express express my to express those genres and I use the violin to perform um, in those styles of music. And I always think that I always say that like my instrument that I play, the violin or viola, piano, whatever I'm doing, is more so a tool. It's more so like a vehicle towards my mode of expression. It's not like I don't identify with myself. I don't tell people that like typically like, oh, I'm like a classical violinist or I'm a whatever viola. I don't like to identify like myself with the instrument because to me the instrument is more so just like the amplifier, right? It's more like me having a megaphone. It's projecting, instruments projecting my internal visceral feelings, but the instrument isn't me. And I think what a lot of people may assume is that, like for instance, like, oh, I play, when people see a violinist or like a cellist, whatever, it's easy to lump that into a category. Like, oh, this is like, classical music, this is that. They put it inside a box. And I think in our American society, we really much rely on boxes like, oh, this goes here, and people, and it just, I think it makes like life easier to live for people in some ways because to see like how two things coexisting at the same time for a lot of folks is very hard to imagine. And so my goal is kind of to break that barrier down. Like, hey, yeah, I play the violin, but but I can also like play this jazz piece. Or I can also do this R&B tune. I'm not just limited to this one box that society has lumped me in.
Wow,
So
what an inspirational story, and I just amazing, and I cannot express enough the importance of kicking those doors down and rearranging some of those expectations. And I think that's one of the most impactful things that art allows us to do. And so hats off to you for all of that great stuff and the inspiration, and more importantly, just being able to power through and seize a goal. And so many people have them, and it's so inspiring to hear when people are able to stick with those things and be able to actually accomplish what it is they're trying to do and continue to do so, which is
Yeah.
certainly what it seems like you're doing. So,
Thank you.
so absolutely, thank you.
Of course. My
So
pleasure.
Armand, this is called Box Lunch, and I was very curious. Do you have anything on your lunch menu today? What are you having for lunch today?
Yes, I have one item. I have sliced apples, and here be careful. Be careful. Yeah, I have sliced apples and almond butter. That's what I have today. It's like right here. My sliced apples, my almond butter. Very
Very
basic. I
nice.
like fruit a lot. I like apples. Um, and I just got off a long trip over the holidays, and I didn't have anything in my refrigerator, so I just basically took what I had, and it was an apple and some almond butter. But
Well, it certainly looks like we are aligned today. Today I'm having fruit and veggies.
so we're both in the same
My
boat.
my little cutie nectarine here that I'll be having for lunch, and
Yeah.
I'm going to let everybody in on a little secret. One of my favorite and most wonderful treats that I just absolutely enjoy are cucumbers soaked in vinegar with a little salt and pepper. And some
I have
people
to try
put,
that.
oh my gosh, it's so good. Some people put
Yeah.
tomatoes and onions in there as well. So I guess you would kind of call it a veggie salad. I'm
It's like
not for sure.
It's a medley of sort.
But I love
Yeah.
vinegar and oil. So I cut up a cucumber, put it in a Tupperware, soaked it overnight in apple vinegar this time. I believe that might be an old wives' tale about a probiotic in that, but there's also no sugar or calories in vinegar. So I'm trying to kick off the first Monday and be a little healthier than I have in the
Yeah.
past. So it's
Definitely.
easy to prep, easy to clean up, and that's where I'm going with lunch today. So, Armand, I got
Yeah.
a question for you in terms of the educational component that you deal with. I've asked, I think, 52 people how they feel about the pandemic and how it's impacting them. And as an educator, I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about how are you seeing the kids dealing with all of this in a classroom, in the educational setting, and what's your take on how the youth of America is coping with all of these things?
From my experience, like honestly, it is kind of like the students are I definitely sense like some of the anxiety and like the stress of my students, and a lot of them are very much over the whole virtual thing. They're just like they're exhausted, they're fatigued, they're zoomed out, like
Right.
they're zoomed out of the whole thing, and it's completely understandable. I mean, adults are too, and and really, I think it all impacts. It's very much an individual situation too, because like it really depends on the student and how they're doing. Some students are doing it better than they were virtually, than they were not virtually, and some students are doing um, a lot a lot worse because of the virtual learning component as well, because and it doesn't fit their learning style, and particularly with and it's really unfortunate because particularly with my students, like um, you know, I teach in a school that is like a lower income school that has you know, lower income school issues, like you know, as we may all know. I mean, there's like a lack of there's not and there's not like a huge amount of resources always available to these students, and they come from um, you know, they don't have access to like, you know, tutors or like they don't have access to to like just like the extra resources they would need to be successful. And there's a lot of reasoning behind all of this. A lot of it, you know, to do. Well, I mean, we can have a whole another conversation on like you know the history of school of like about school funding and education and equity. But really, what the whole pandemic has really exposed is the sheer amount of inequity and all within between these schools, because like a school like mine, which is predominantly Hispanic, um, and also Black, a lot of my students like parents do not speak any English or very little English. Not all of them, but the majority of them. And so, and there's always kind of been a language barrier um, within within my school that has prevented like the that has really hindered the adequate distribution of information
Right.
to these parents because of that language barrier. And with the whole virtual learning component added into it, I mean, it makes that much worse, really, when you have like a language, when you have a excuse me, when you have a language barrier in like in the way. And then also a lot of and then also like there's a good percentage of my students who are like ELL learners who are still developing their English abilities, who are and really, and I think the a strong assumption is that people is that these students, you know, are like I think there's a big assumption with students who are learning English that they are, you know, not as intelligent, which is vastly which is very like inaccurate and offensive, because like all these students are speaking two languages every day. Like learning to speak two languages while we can get away as native English speakers with, you know, just speaking one. And so to be able to be bilingual and understand and emote in like two different languages, it's complicated. Like and so and a lot of these students act as translators too, oftentimes for their parents, and they have a lot of adult responsibilities, like also for instance we're like taking care of younger siblings as well. And so it's like I really, as doing the virtual learning component as well as in person, because we're both in person and virtual at the same time,
Right.
and within my school district, it has really like we have really, I think a lot of teachers have kind of gotten a better lens of what's going on in the students households and what is, and we have really felt the inequities, not even just amongst from inequities between school districts, um, but just inequities but just like the differences between our own students who some do have like resources at their disposal and those who don't. Like it makes a huge difference. Like and this whole pandemic has really just exposed that. And so my students, a lot of them are doing really well. I'll say most of my students in my class are doing well. Some I actually haven't seen all year, which is like worries me. And then some have just kind of, you know, for whatever reason, which I don't know because I don't know what's going on, everything that's going on at their houses, like haven't participating. And so like it's really just kind of I mean it is a hectic year. It's crazy, and it's, you know, there are a lot of the opportunity gap, unfortunately, I think just as a nation, it's kind of just like growing growing more and more, unfortunately. And yeah, like it's really, and as I was just saying earlier, it really just depends because what student we're talking about, what family we're talking about, what zip code we're talking about of how the kids are doing. Because like I have like for me, like I know of students who come from more affluent backgrounds who are just doing just fine, like, you know, with virtual learning. I mean, that makes it, and because they have resources to their disposal. And so of course it's going to be easier for them to learn, but students who don't aren't exactly in the same situation. So it's really a lot. It's really a lot, and it can be overwhelming for sure. And it almost feels like we're just doing as teachers right now. It really, to me, feels like we are functioning as damage control, basically, because it's like not a huge amount of learning to me can realistically be made this year, or at least not as much learning as the previous years. So it's really like, I feel like we're just really kind of in a state of limbo right now. I'm just trying to get through and make it to the next year. Gotcha. And yeah.
So Armond, as we wrap all this up, I have a question for you, and hopefully some people can maybe provide some assistance to some of this sort of concerns and issues that we have in the educational area and the arts area and every other area that is struggling through these pandemic challenges. What helpful community resources are you seeing or using personally or professionally? And how can your organization be assisted or provide assistance to other artists or organizations and educators?
So, I mean, personally, for myself, I mean, earlier in the year, like I asked for donations for my, I actually asked for donations just through social media platforms to my orchestra to help support the virtual learning aspect of my orchestra students, because every student needed their own instrument, their own accessories for the instrument this year, because we didn't want to transmit COVID through sharing instruments. I had all students share instruments last year, and that can't happen. And so we had to change the strategy. And so I reached out, and I do social media and asking people willing just to donate to my program. And that was actually very helpful. I mean, I was able to get all the resources that I need, most of the resources that I need for my students and everything. And I'm glad. And my district has been my department specifically within my district has been very supportive as well in this whole process. But yeah, I mean, in terms of resources, I mean, that I really utilize, besides doing that what I just stated in donations, like as an artist, for me, like I haven't, like, I mean, my greatest resource during this time has really just kind of been trying to take care of myself. Like that really hasn't been like, that's been pretty much what I've been doing. I mean, that's just like, you know, checking in with my mental health and picking on other like activities. I started roller skating again, which has been very helpful, very therapeutic for me. And I also you know, just started like going on, like, as what everyone's doing, or what a lot of people are doing, like going on more walks and doing all of those things. And I've also started like reading a lot more during this time. I really have utilized this time as like an artist to give I really have utilized this time as an artist to kind of really refine my own craft, and through practicing, and to be the musician that I really like want to be. And I think that the pandemic has really given me the pause to really reflect, and really just because during like outside of this whole pandemic, like I was just on, like, you know, just going one thing to the next, not having time to think. And for me, I'm fortunate enough to where I do have a secure job, like teaching middle school. And so like I could you know, kind of do all these things comfortably, without having to worry about like financial stress, which, you know, isn't a situation for everyone, unfortunately. But yeah, it's given me, like, I think this pause that has been created because of the pandemic has really just, I mean, it's the reason why I came up with the Front Porch Concert series idea. It's because, like, I wanted to have more experiences as an artist where I wanted to have greater human connection, like,
Right.
as an artist, and I wanted to make it, and I wanted to be, make things more personal for everyone. And it's made me, and this whole thing has made me want to just be more thoughtful and much more generous, like, to everyone in general. So yeah.
Well, Armond, I have to say, you are a blessing to this community, and we are so grateful for all you have shared artistically in the educational field, and just so thankful to have you around. And this is probably the most important question I'm going to ask you today. How and where can we find you and keep up with you to see all of these fabulous things that are going on in your life and all these great things that you're sharing with the community?
Yeah, so I have a Instagram. It's called Armond V Strings. Again, it's Armond V Strings, and that is my primary mode of communication, and also where I share a lot of my posts. Um, and I also have a Facebook page. It's Armond Vance, dash, then musician. It's Armond Vance, musician. And those are my primary means of, like, sharing my art and just communicating. So if you contact me through there, any of those platforms, then I will be sure to respond to you as quickly as possible. And I also have email too, which is listed under both of those platforms as well, if you want to, if that is the preferred method of communicating as well. So
Awesome.
yeah, Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, we'll get some links in the comments down here on this chat. And again, Armond, I'm just overwhelmed by your thoughtfulness and your ability to think outside the box and continue to do all you can to share this wonderful artwork. And it's just amazing. I've seen some of your videos, and just really, really impressive. So keep up the great work. And any final thoughts for our viewers out there?
Well, thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jason, for inviting me to be a part of this wonderful program. And just thank you for everyone who tuned in, who watched and listened to it. Final thoughts. I mean, I wish everyone, you know, happy New Year, a hopefully better than the previous year. And also hope everyone can be the best versions of themselves this year.
Indeed.
And
God
stay
bless
healthy.
you, my friend. We need a lot more people like you out there, and I'll just leave it at that. So
thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, into 2021. It is January 4th.
Yeah.
Folks, wear your masks, wash your hands, treat each other well, treat yourself well. And with that being said, bon appetit, everybody. And we will be back next Monday with another new episode of Box Lunch. Cheers, my friends. Stay healthy, stay happy, Armond. I look forward to meeting you in person, and I'll send you my address. You can come inspire me with some of that music as well.
Oh, for sure. Just let me know. Hit me up when you're ready.
Have a great day, everybody.
Jason.
Take care. We'll see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.